So welcome. On behalf of the Loveland Public Library, thank you for coming. My name is Stephanie Hillberry, and my company is called Hillberry Ventures. My husband and I, Craig, the Beatles gentleman over there, work together, and what we do is help people to take their message and their ideas to the marketplace. So we help people create ebooks, e-courses, printed books, websites, for them to communicate what they have on their heart to share with the world, and we help them get it out there. So that is what we do, and I'm here today to talk to you about the world of self-publishing. I want to preface my presentation, come on in, preface my presentation by saying that the industry of publishing is changing a lot very rapidly right now. I mean, it is in flux. So take everything that I instruct you with a grain of salt, because what I say today may not be right tomorrow. So I just want to state that right now, and to encourage you to really do your homework when you're making decisions about doing any kind of publishing right now. Like I said, things change a lot. So I stay abreast of the changes that are happening, but I would have to, I mean, it would be like a full-time job to keep up with everything. There's a lot of battles being fought in the courts right now. All this technology that's coming out right now is really changing things. So, don't write what I say in stone or anything like that. So we are going to cover a lot of content in a short amount of time. If I overwhelm you, I apologize, but there's just a lot to know about this industry. So give you a little, whoops. This is an overview of what we're going to be discussing. We're going to talk about creating your book, listing your book, and then the third topic, which is actually my most favorite arena of this whole process, is marketing and selling your book. I have an asterisk by that because we are not going to have time to get into it. So I am just going to say right now, if you want to know information about marketing and selling, we will, come on in, Sue. We will, I have a lot of resources on my website, and I send out regular emails that deal with this aspect of it. So for now, we're going to do creating and listing, and marketing and selling I would love to talk about maybe at a later time, or if you would like to follow me, I have that conversation a lot. So first, we're going to begin by talking about creating your book, putting together your content. And one of the things that I think is funny is that I get approached a lot by people who write, who want to write, and they say, oh, you know, I would love to start writing more. I really want to be a published writer. And I say, oh, really? So how's it going? Like, you know, have you been writing? Oh, no. I've got it in here. I know what my outline is. And I always think that's the trick, isn't it? I was talking to a couple ladies last night who self-published, and I asked them, you know, what's your advice? I'm giving a talk tomorrow to an audience of people who are interested in publishing, and what advice would you give them? And they said, first of all, it's easier than you think it is. But secondly, they said, you have to write, which seems sort of obvious, but really, a lot of it comes down to that. You have to actually write. So one of the things that I really encourage people is to consider the work that you've already done if you're wanting to maybe publish something. I actually spend a lot of time for my business teaching people how to repurpose content that they've already put together into a book or a course. So I always like to say, if you don't have to start from scratch, then don't. I think as creative people, we're often excited about some new idea. We're always thinking about that new idea that we have, that new thing that we want to start, and a lot of times we neglect the work that we did maybe 2 years ago or 5 years ago that is still valuable, and we could give it a little bit of TLC, and it would be ready to go out there. So I've listed just a couple places where you might find things of value that you've already done. If you're blogging, your blog archive could be a really great resource. If you've written articles in the past, I mean, maybe they aren't published, but you spent some time writing articles, or you've submitted things to the newspaper, even if you're a student and you have articles, those could be something that you kind of refresh and rejuvenate. Newsletters, if you send out paper or email newsletters. That might be content that you can repurpose. Or presentations like this. We're going to have a video, an audio, and then this file after we're done with this presentation. If I wanted to, I could use this as the backbone for maybe a book or an e-course. So think a little bit outside the box, maybe about resources you already have. And then, of course, step 2 is to, write. And that's, so you either repurposing something you have or starting from scratch. So I listed a couple things on here. And this is just, writing hasn't changed. The industry is changing every single day. But telling a good story, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, has not changed since we started telling stories around fires, way back then. And I think that it's important to remember that. Because there's a lot more accessibility right now, anybody can kind of jump into the arena. There's some criticism that the quality of content is kind of going down, and I think that that's fair, which is why I want to remind everyone that quality still really matters. So when you write and you're putting together what you want to share, keep the reader in mind, your target market. It's a marketing principle, and it's just good storytelling. So as you're putting together what you want to say, think about who's going to be reading this. Think about what you're going to call it. I am not the kind of person that could come up with a title first. Some people really need that. Like, they need to have the title before they start writing. I'm the opposite. I almost need to finish it before I title it. Regardless of your style, pick something that's going to catch people's attention. A title is important. Quality structure. I have had a few people submit to me some drafts that they have in the process of working with them, and they're sharing things that are interesting and valuable, but they have forgotten that good stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I know that that seems really basic, but there have been things I've read where I think, this is interesting, but you're not sort of drawing me to the next step. So if you're writing nonfiction, it's really important to have a logical outline. It's point 1, point 2, point 3. Tell the reader what you're going to share and then lead them sequentially through your information. Likewise, if you're writing fiction, you need some kind of plot or conflict followed by resolution. Those basic building blocks of telling stories have not gone away. So don't forget them when you're writing. Think back to your days of being in, junior high, writing for your English teacher. Those principles have not changed. And good stories always include them. And if you're putting something together, it's a really good idea to have a second or third pair of eyes. Look over it. Because that's the kind of thing that other people can typically spot, that maybe you're overlooking. So they might say, this is good, but it's just lacking some, it's lacking that conflict, or it's lacking that climax. So it's nice to get some other opinions. Likewise with grammar, and that's one thing that I know English teachers and librarians around the world are lamenting the demise of quality grammar. Email is killing it, Avoid emoticons. Don't put little smiley faces in what you write. Capitalize things that should be capitalized. Practice good fundamental grammar skills. And again, have 2, 3, as many people as you can help you proofread what you've done. Because it's really easy, and I'm a victim of this, or I should say guilty of this, it's easy to put something together and, overlook an error, maybe an awkward phrase, maybe something that needs to be moved to a lower spot in your paragraph. One of the tricks that I use a lot for myself and also for clients is I read out loud after I've kind of gone through my draft. It really helps me to catch typos and incorrect word placement in a way that I wouldn't by just reading it, because I'll gloss over it, especially if I'm so familiar, I've read through it time and time again. I'll miss important things that, like I said, those small typos. So when you're self-publishing, you don't have the benefit of a publishing house with an editor and a proofreading staff, so it's really up to you to make sure that your quality is still professional. The more professional you are, the more seriously people will take you. And the more seriously they'll treat your content. And there's nothing that undermines the professionalism than a silly typo. Nothing. So I always, like I said, to remind, if you're self-publishing, if you're publishing with a publisher, if you're writing a blog post, it doesn't matter what you're putting out there, just follow good fundamental practices. Step 3, create your visuals. We live in a very visual world. So when you're publishing, remember that you're going to need some kind of art to go along with your words. Depending on the type of thing that you're writing about, you may need more or less. It just depends on what you're producing. But graphic art is an important one. A lot of the ebooks that I do for clients, I will incorporate graphics into them, maybe tables and charts that just illustrate what they're saying in a visual way, in addition to the words that they're using. We're not going to talk a lot about this, but when people are reading on a mobile device like an iPad or an iPhone or a Kindle, they tend to really look for pictures. Because when we read online, we pay attention less to the words that are online and more to the overall look of a page. We kind of take in the whole thing at once. So if you are up for the challenge and you kind of like that idea of communicating visually as well as with your words, then begin to think, even as you're drafting and putting together your content, how can I say this in a different way using some kind of graphic or a picture or clip art or something like that. Think about that. As early as you can, start thinking about it. Images is another great one. We have a couple photographers in the room. Make sure that when you're using graphics and images that you're not hijacking someone's copyrighted content. It's really important. So if it's not your original image, your original photo that you've done or taken, make sure that you are either using something that is free in the public domain or that you've purchased. So there are a lot of sites out there. I just did a cover for a client, and we used a picture of a group of kids jumping, and I purchased it from a site, and it gave me, the rights to it so that she could use it and reproduce it. It's just nice that you need to be able to cover your bases when it comes to any kind of image out there. It's the same rule as if you're going to be quoting someone in your content. You have to give credit. You have to make sure that you're not, copywriting. And then finally, a headshot. This is something that I think we tend to overlook. People really like to see who has been writing this. So it's not necessarily an image that you have to put right on the cover. You don't have to be like Dave Ramsey or Susie or Oprah, right on the cover is just you. But at some point, most people have their picture either on the inside flap or on the back cover or on an internal page. So show them who you are and be thinking about that picture even as you're putting together your story. So those are a couple notes on visuals. So now we're going to talk a little bit about software, because I get this question a lot. How do I do this? I can sit down on my computer, but how do I get it from my Word or my word processor into something that a publisher can use to print or into something that I can upload to Amazon? So I've got a list here of different options. The first one is Adobe InDesign. How many of you have or use this program? A few of you. It is the professional standard in the industry for creating pretty much any kind of printed document or ebook. And every upgrade that Adobe has to this, they add more and more electronic functions to it. So they're really trying to make it the software that people use to publish ebooks, interactive PDFs, that kind of thing. It's not an easy software to use, and it's not a cheap software to use. So I preface that with it. Adobe just this year rolled out a program where you can lease the software on a month-to-month basis, which makes it a little bit more affordable. Normally, to buy their sort of creative suite, which includes this software, it's over $1,000, unless you're an educator or a student. So you can lease it at like $50 a month, which is a nice option if you don't have the upfront cash and you are really wanting to be serious about publishing. So that's one option. That is, however, not required. You can produce and publish a book without the expensive software. So for instance, home office software, specifically Microsoft Word and Apple Pages, which are kind of the two word processors that Mac and Microsoft use. Both of them can be used to create an ebook. Microsoft Office with Word, a lot of the publishing websites, like for instance Amazon and Barnes & Noble, know that most people have Word and are probably going to be creating in Word. So guess what? They make it easy. They let you upload your Word document and they convert it for you into the ebook format that they use for their platform. And they give you some, we'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about formatting, but they give you instructions. If you're using Word, here are some suggestions for how to format your document so that it converts in the best possible way. Maybe not perfectly, but in the best possible way. So I have found specifically that a lot of these online publishers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, Lulu, almost all of them have some instructions and accept Word files because that's what most people use. They're not quite as, they don't have the same accommodations if you're on a Mac and you're using software like Pages. So if you are on a Mac and you're using Pages, which is, I'm a Mac user, you can still export your file into a PDF, which Word will also let you do. Pages also gives you the ability to export into an ebook specific file format that you can upload directly to the booksellers. So Pages is a really good software. Kind of Apple has done the same thing as Amazon in that they're trying to make their software more and more digital publishing friendly. So Pages is what I've used before for some of the books that I've done, and I've just exported right into the file format that I need. Like I said, we'll talk about those, but home office software, you can totally use it. You can be published by the end of the week using Word if you want to. There's some other options. Calibre is a free software that you can download. I'm not going to lie, it's a little clunky, but it is very flexible in that it can take your file format, whatever you have, and usually turn it into something different. So if you have Word and you want a PDF, it can do that for you. Or if you have Word and you want to turn it into an HTML file, it can do that for you. So Calibre Online is a tool that you can use, available for free. And then there's a couple others. Scrivener is software that a friend of mine who's also does a lot of self-publishing uses. She really likes it. Last time I checked, it was around the ballpark of $50 to download, which isn't bad. And it's specifically geared toward people who are wanting to self-publish. And then there's some places online, which we'll talk about in a while, that give you software that you can download. Blurb is an example, blurb.com. They are a self-publishing platform, and they let you download their software so you can create your book on your own computer using their software, and then just click and it'll publish to their site. So there's some options out there too if maybe you're wanting to do, I think they specialize a lot in books that have a lot of photos. So if you're wanting to do something that's got lots of pictures and different, more creative layouts, and you don't feel like Word, for instance, can do that very well, you can look at a place like Blurb. They have some more options. And one thing I didn't put on here, you can create an ebook in your presentation software. So like PowerPoint or Apple Keynote. I've done that. Sometimes those softwares are a little more flexible if you're wanting to do lots of pictures and move your text around so it's not so structured in a page. You can use those software. They usually let you export into a PDF file, so you can turn your slides into a PDF. So we're going to talk about choosing print or choosing digital. One thing that I've discovered, I'm very enthusiastic about digital publishing, ebooks, and all that, the whole realm. But I've discovered that the book is not gone by the wayside. I still get a lot of requests from people who want books, actual paper-bound or hardback books. So we're going to talk about print versus digital. And right now there's a lot of options if you're wanting to create something that is a tangible paperback or hardback book. Some examples of places to do that are lulu.com, blurb.com. I just had a client, we used minibook.com. CreateSpace is in partnership with Amazon. All of these companies, plus I'm sure countless others online, will take your file and create a printed book for you. So you designate what size you want, how many pages you're going to have. You send your file to them, you send your cover art to them, and then they will print it into a book for you. And usually they'll send you a proof in the mail, and then some of them, like with Minibook, you have to order, and I can't remember how many it is. My client, I think, ordered initially 500 books. So you have to order and keep an inventory of them. Others, like both Lulu and Blurb, do print on demand. So you send in your file, they'll send you a proof, and beyond that, you don't have to order any books. You can just put your book on maybe your website. People can click on it. It will direct them to the site, and they'll order it from there, and then Lulu will print it on demand for them and ship it to them. So that's kind of nice. You're not having to keep an inventory. You're not having to buy hundreds of copies of your book to sell them. You can sell it right from your website, and they'll do the printing per customer. So that's an option.
What kind of cost are you looking at for Lulu?
It really varies. But one of the disadvantages of print is that it's not cheap when you're dealing with, anytime you're dealing with printing. So they're going to take a cut, for one thing, and then they're going to charge you for the cost of printing. So, and I can't quote prices on it because, like I said, it really varies. It depends on the size. It depends on how many pages you have. It depends on what kind of paper you choose. But they all have calculators that kind of tell you, type in I want this size with this kind of paper with this many pages, and it'll say it's going to cost you $5 to produce every one of these, which means if it costs me $5 to print and produce a 100-page book, that's a 6x4, whatever size, then I know that if I want to make any money on it, I have to charge $7, $8, so that I'm getting some profit. So you want to make sure that you're charging above your production cost and also including what you're going to pay Lulu, their royalty. And all these sites have calculators for you to kind of plug that information in. So we will get to why choosing print and then why not to choose print. So here's some reasons why, if you're thinking about print, it's still a good idea. One is you can use printed books promotionally. This is what I get a lot of requests for. I have a lot of people who are speaking. They're in front of audiences, and they want something tangible for people to buy. And a book is great for that. So that's a great reason to choose to print something. Also, books still carry a heavy weight of authority. When you have a book and it's a physical book, it's got your name on it, it's professionally bound, it communicates a certain level of credibility and authority for you. So that has not gone away. And books still, even though electronic publishing, ebooks, are growing by leaps and bounds, and the gap is really closing with perception, this still, in people's minds, is more valid than an ebook. It just is. It's still more valid. So if you're really wanting that extra sense of validity, then a paperback book communicates that. Third, books are more accessible than digital files. Not everyone has an e-reader. Not everyone likes to read on the computer. People still like to read actual books that they hold with their hands, the smell of paper. So if you're wanting to get it literally into the hands of people, a book is more accessible. And finally, books are familiar. There's, I mean, the people who are younger are, I think, as familiar with digital reading as with books, but that's still less than half of the population. Most of us were raised with books. We're used to reading books. They are the familiar way of taking in information. So those are some reasons to choose print. Here's some reasons to pass on print. One is that formatting is more complicated and time-consuming when you're doing it yourself. To get your files so that they translate from your computer onto a page, plus your cover, plus printing it on the back and the front so that it looks right, it's not extremely easy. It takes a little bit of time, and it can be frustrating. Trust me, I've been down this road many times before, and it can be challenging. Secondly, editing is more difficult, and there's less room for error. Once you print something, it's printed. So if you forgot that, typo in the first paragraph in your first page, and you've printed it, you've printed it. There's no changing that. You can't erase that. With a digital file, it's not a problem. You can go in there, you can change it, you can re-upload the file, and you're done. So there's a lot more permanency with printing, which means that if you have errors, you can't change them. And finally, printing is just more expensive. And that makes sense. You're using resources, paper, cover, printers, ink, shipping, so it's a more expensive route to go. So let's talk about printing digitally. Publishing in digital format is increasingly popular, especially as demand for these mobile devices grows. And I say grow, I don't even think that's an appropriate word. It's like skyrocketing. There is, I can't remember how much Apple made this month when they introduced their new phone. It's insane how much money they make. I was telling this story in a seminar last week. There's a lot of legal back and forth between Samsung and Apple. I don't know if you've heard of this conflict. Well, Samsung lost the court debate, and they've been fined $3 billion, which just seems like, it doesn't seem, it is an enormous amount of money. And I was listening to some gentleman talking about it, and he's like, oh, that is a drop in the bucket for Samsung. Like, that's nothing. That's like a slap on, oh, darn it. We might take my $5, It's like $5 to Samsung. That shows you how much money they are making in selling mobile devices. If $3 billion is a slap on the wrist, then that tells you that a lot of people are buying this technology, which means that a lot of people are wanting to find things to read on their devices. I know I'm a perfect example of this. I got an iPad this year for my birthday, and immediately I wanted to see how many things I could find that I could read on my iPad, just because it's fun. It's like, it's new, it's different. So it's definitely going to become more and more popular. So why choose digital? It's free to list on most major platforms. So you can, Amazon and Barnes & Noble will roll out the carpet for you. Come on, list your book with us. We won't charge you anything to do it. If you sell it, then yeah, we want a cut. But you can put it on there for free, which is really fantastic. It's the lowest cost method of publishing by far. You're not having to keep an inventory. You're not having to print things. You can sell without having to deal with shipping costs. It's easy, as I mentioned, to update and apply edits to your files. And ebooks are trendy. They're the buzz right now. So it's a good time to get into it. So why pass? Frankly, I can't think of a good reason to pass on digital right now. I think that if you're trying to decide between print and digital and you're having a difficult time, then maybe do both. But if you're going to be publishing and you're wanting to do print, you should also at least do a digital version of your book as well, because more and more people are going to be looking for that option, and it's nice to provide it. So I can think of maybe some reasons why you don't want to exclusively publish digitally, and we've talked about those. It doesn't quite have as much validity so far. Again, I think that's changing, but You don't have something tangible for people to hold on to, and people still like that. But it is, other than that, there's no reason not to do it. And certainly if you're going to publish in general, publish digitally. So creating your ebook, we're going to cover cover design and formatting. And feel free, I've been gabbing a lot, and like I said, I have a lot to cover, but you can interrupt me with questions if they come up. Oh yeah, I'll repeat the question for the video. So,
I had one comment when you were talking about print on demand. Color is another
That's
aspect.
true.
If you put colored
That's true.
there, you pay per page.
It's true. Yep. If you want, yes, you're absolutely right, and I hadn't thought about that. But printing in black and white, much cheaper than printing in full color. So most publishers will give you the option you can have your color cover, and then the internal pages are black and white. But if you want those internal images to be color, it can get pretty pricey. So speaking of covers, for digital books, you can create a cover for your book using your Microsoft Word, using PowerPoint, using Apple Pages, put some pictures in there, some text, and you can just upload that file directly to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Smashwords. So creating a cover for your digital book is easy because it's just, it's a one-dimensional digital cover. You're just giving it a look. For printed books, it's a lot more complicated. Not only do you need to design it, and really you need professional software for it. The image quality is really important. You need a high resolution image if you're using one. You also have to take into consideration a cover is not just the front. It's the front, the spine, and the back. And the spine, how big that is, depends on how many pages your book has. And when you're creating it, you have to think about, do I want this image to bleed out? Do I want it, when they cut it, to cut right at the edge of it? Or do I want it to be inside the frame of where they cut? So that kind of thing are all considerations you have to think about when you're designing a cover that's going to be on a printed book. Which is why I say you need professional software or you need to hire someone to create a cover for you. It gets kind of technical when you're dealing with a cover. So how important is a cover? Very important. We judge books by their covers, as the cliche says. Especially now, we are very visually driven, especially as consumers. I mean, when you go to a bookstore, when you go online to shop for a book, you make an immediate judgment based on that cover. How professional does it look? Am I attracted to it? And my instant decision about the cover is going to lead me to my next step, which is, am I going to pick it up and flip through it? So a cover is really important. It has always been important. And one of my tips that I suggest is to study the covers of other books in your field or genre. And you can do that really easily if you go into Google, for instance, and you type in, like for instance, I did a parenting book for a client recently, and I was supposed to design her cover, so I went into Google and I typed in parenting books, and then I clicked, search, and then I clicked on images. So it gave me just the images of parenting books, and I got to see a whole selection of covers. One thing I learned from that research is that a large majority of parenting books have photos of children on the cover. It's a very popular way of creating a cover for a parenting book. So, and not clip art of children, but a photo of children on the cover. And guess what we did? We ended up putting a photo of children on the cover of the book. And that's partly because that seemed to be what was really successful and worked well for parenting books. So do a little homework, get some ideas, pay attention to the kind of covers that you like, that you're attracted to, and try to sort of copy those designs. Or if you're hiring someone, give them some samples and say, this is what I like, this is what is in my field. I'd like to see some things that look sort of similar or follow this type of look and feel. So let's see. Now for the internal files for formatting. Advice for printed books. Most of the companies that are going to do self-publishing in printed format give you lots of help for formatting the inside of your book. So they usually give you detailed instructions, and a lot of them provide templates for you that you can download into your software. So a template for Word or a template for Adobe InDesign. One of my tips is if they provide a template, use it. It will save you time. But they'll tell you, you know, for instance, on your internal pages, they'll tell you you need to have this margin for your text. And then here's your margin for your text, and then around your margin for the text, this is your bleed area. So if you want something to go right out to the very edge of the page, then you could still go in that bleed area. But make sure your words aren't there because they might get cut off. So they'll give you those kinds of instructions and tell you when you set up your file, you need, you know, this is set your margins for this. Set your bleed area for this. Or download the template so that you know how to put your content in there. They also do this. Usually they have a separate file for your cover, which includes the spine. And they'll give you a calculation that says if you have this many pages with this type of paper, your spine is exactly this width. So when you're putting together your file and you're wanting to put your title and your name down your spine, make sure that it's not too big or too small, depending on your pages. So again, this part is the part that's going to make you want to pull your hair out. It's not fun. It can be frustrating. So if there was ever an area where you wanted to outsource, this would potentially be it. Or if you wanted to just go digital. You don't have to deal with margins or bleed or spines. Just publish it digitally. So speaking of digital, there are several different types of file formats for digital publishing. So we're going to cover them. The first one is an EPUB file format. This is the standard e-book format. It's used on iPads, iPhones, Nooks, other e-readers like a Sony e-reader. It is, I believe it's actually a file that's written in with some HTML in it. You don't necessarily have to know how to use HTML. But EPUB is, like for instance, if you upload your Word document to Barnes & Noble, they're going to convert it into this format for you. If you have Apple Pages, you can export your file into this format. So this is what this is, like I said, kind of the standard in ebooks. The other really very common format is a PDF file. A lot of people still publish in PDFs. A PDF file is the most common that you see if you're buying a book that you're reading like on your laptop. Tablets like Kindle Fires and iPads read PDFs very well. PDF files, I have a note here, a lot, exclamation, formatting might be lost. So a PDF file looks great on an iPad, but if you put it on a Nook, it gets really wonky. The content is still there, the text is still there, but if you're putting pictures and stuff like that into your PDF file, those are they're not going to translate as well on like a Nook or the Kindle e-reader. So just so you know, PDF files, very common, but they don't work perfectly on an e-reader.
So if you're using Word, Microsoft Word, you can put it in the EPUB?
If you're using Microsoft Word, then when you go to a place like Amazon or Barnes & Noble, I should say Barnes & Noble, they will convert your file for you. So you upload, you don't have to worry about it. So you upload your file, and then it converts it, and what it'll do is it'll give you a preview window, and it'll show you exactly what your pages look like, convert it into an EPUB format. Chances are you're going to notice some style things. Like one thing that comes up consistently is that there are question marks in places where there shouldn't be. And that's because in the document, when it's translated into an EPUB, the EPUB format doesn't know what to do with that space that you put in there, so it puts a question mark in there. So this is not perfect science. It definitely, one of the things that's nice, and the library, we're kind of trying to figure this out. I'm going to take a venture to the lab after we talk here, but with Pages, for instance, they give you a template that has some stylistic things where you can kind of paste and copy your text in a way that an EPUB format likes the best. So, and I'm not going to get into all of that specificity because it can get kind of cumbersome, but it's worth reading the formatting suggestions. So like I was just in Barnes & Noble yesterday while I was kind of refreshing my memory about some of this, and Barnes & Noble has a little link that says, you know, formatting suggestions if you're using Word. So they'll give you tips. If you're creating your document in Word, things to avoid so that when it gets turned into an EPUB format, you don't have as many of those, you know, random question marks that don't belong in your content, or paragraphs that are spaced awkwardly, or things like that. So the bottom line is, if the distributor or the publisher gives you suggestions for how to format, it's worth reading because it is, it's usually good tips. So my suggestion, write your book. Just write it. However you want. Pay no attention to all this formatting gobbledygook. Just write it. When you get it to where you want it, where it's got good grammar, it's been edited, you have your content, then worry about changing the formatting. And what I would do is I would create a whole new document, and then I would copy and paste my text, you know, bit by bit into the new document, following the formatting tips that they give you. But don't get bogged down when you're creating it in the first place with all this stuff, or you will never reach the finish line. So write, you know, freely without being encumbered by this, and then when you're getting closer, then tackle the nitty-gritty of how it's formatted. Couple more formats for you to be aware of. Mobi is the proprietary format used by Amazon. They do not play well with others. They're the big boys in the room, and they do whatever they want to. So it's the format used by Kindle products. Amazon will convert it for you, again. So you don't have to know how to create a file in a Mobi format. So again, you go into their system and they say, upload, you know, your Word document or your PDF file, and we will convert it into this Mobi format for you. And just like Barnes & Noble, they'll give you a preview so that you can see what your pages look like. They even have like a little Kindle on the screen so you can see what it looks like on this Kindle, and then you can click on a tab and you can see what it looks like on a different type of Kindle. One tip with this is I have found, if you can, that an EPUB file converts to a Mobi file the very best. So if you have an EPUB version of your book, that's the file format I would select to upload to Amazon, as opposed to a Word document, if you can. So because I use Apple and their Pages software lets me export an EPUB file directly, I use that file when I'm uploading to Amazon. You get less of those kind of quirky, like I said, random question marks and stuff. Yeah?
How many of these uploads do you do? To 7 or 8 companies, or just one?
Well, we'll talk about that. No, you're fine. It's a great question. So it really depends. If you want to, you can go to each different place, create a separate account with each different place, and upload your book, create the book in that space. Or you can use what's called an aggregator, which is you upload it to the one place. They're kind of like a middleman, and then they will distribute your file to all of these different places for you. Of course, they're going to charge you for the convenience of that, but that's one option too. The benefit of doing it that way is you get it into more places, and if you want to make a change, you don't have to go into each individual place to make your change. You can make it one time, and then it'll automatically update across the board for you. So we're going to get to those aggregators when we talk about listing. So for listing your book, here's just a sample. This is a pretty good list. It doesn't include everything, but things that they'll ask you for when you're listing. They want a description of your book and a description of you as the writer. They want to know what category your book is in, and they always give you a list of categories and subcategories. So you can choose. These are things you start paying more attention to once you start self-publishing, but on the back of books, usually around where they have, on the bottom somewhere, they have the categories, usually of most books, and the subcategories. So again, if you are wanting to publish and you're not sure, look and see the categories of some of the books that are similar to yours and how they listed them. But it's pretty intuitive. It'll make a lot of sense to you when you see your options. They'll ask you how much you want to charge for it. They'll ask you whether you want DRM or not. We're going to talk about DRM. They'll ask you if you have an ISBN number. We'll talk about ISBNs too. They will ask you for your tax ID number, because if you're going to make money, then they have to report that to the government. So you're going to have to provide that. If you're a business and you have a tax ID number, that's what you'll give them. If you are just you, then you'll give them your Social Security number. So just to forewarn you, you have to provide a tax ID number. So they will ask you for it. They'll ask you for your cover, and they'll ask you for the internal file of your book. They might also have a few other things. I think that a lot of them will ask you, do you have any editorial reviews that you want to paste in here? So if you have reviews, there's, I think, a lot of times a separate space for that. But this is the stuff that you can anticipate that they'll want from you. So let's talk about some of these. Description, tips for writing your description. Use keywords. And keywords could be a whole seminar in and of itself. But these are words that you think people would use to find your book. So if I'm writing a parenting book, then maybe keywords are going to be raising children, raising kids, tips for, parenting my family, tips for raising young children, tips for raising teenagers. So those are keywords. So think about not just how you would describe it, but try to put yourself in the shoes of someone who might be searching for your book, and what would they type in to find you. So next is include reviews. Like I said, sometimes they have a separate space for reviews, but sometimes you can also just put them in with your description of your book. You may not have reviews, but I like to mention it because it's something to start thinking about as you're in this phase and you're beginning to think about getting your book out there and marketing it. Start thinking about who can write a couple sentences about this for me and recruit some people to do that for you. And then practice sales and marketing strategies. Again, we're not going to have time to talk about the marketing and selling aspect of this. But one thing I will say is use benefit statements. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. I was just talking with my friend the other day. She has a 5-month-old infant. He's still not sleeping through the night. So she went to her doctor and was like, what do I do? I'm going to kill my baby. And he said, why don't you read this book? So she went online and she was reading the description of the book, and it said, is your child not sleeping through the night? Does it get worse? I guess there's a method where you can go in and just kind of, like pat them on the back, but don't pick them up, just kind of, and I said, are you trying that and it's not working? Your child's getting louder and more upset. She's like, yes, that is me. That's an excellent example of marketing and sales strategy. When you are pinpointing what that person is experiencing, asking a question like that, like, is your child getting more irate when you just pat them on the back? that for her immediate, she's like, I have to have this book, because if my answer is yes and they have a solution, then I need this. So be thinking about that in your description. It's not just describing what you're writing. It's describing it in a way that really connects with where your reader is. So think about that as you're putting together your description. A description in a digital listing is something that you can change, and even if you're selling a printed book, this is something that you can edit. So don't be afraid, if you write something and you publish it and you think, oh, I'd like to rephrase that, or I'd like to add this review, or I'd like to add this thing about me that just came up, you can go in there and edit that. So it's something that you can continually update. Considerations for pricing. I always get this question, what do I price it at? There's no great answer for this. But certainly there's a couple things to think about. One is, what are the royalty terms for pricing? Each different seller has rules about what royalty they will reward you. I shouldn't say reward you. What royalty they will pay you based on the price of your book. So to give you an example, for Amazon, if your book is priced between $2.99 and $9.99, then you earn 70% and they take 30%. If your book is priced below $2.99, so free to $2.99, or if it's above $9.99, then they up their price and lower yours. So you receive, I believe it's 35%, and they take like 65%. So it's an inverse. They take a lot more money. So the point is, do your research. What are their rules for royalty? And how are those rules, how do they change depending on how you price your book? The second thing is, what is your goal with it? Are you using this for marketing, just to get your name out there? Are you using it as a way to promote maybe the other services that you have, or maybe something else, if you're a counselor, or using this book so that you can get more counseling clients? Or are you really wanting to become an author who's a paid income earning author where you're earning off of your books? Your answer to this question is going to impact. So for instance, if I'm just doing marketing, then maybe I don't mind taking a lower royalty if I can sell a lot of books. So if 99 cents, if I think that I'll sell this for 99 cents, I'm not really interested necessarily in making a lot of money on it. I just want to get it into as many hands as I possibly can. So I might choose that, the lower price point to accomplish that goal. Maybe I've got a small book for 99 cents that I offer, and it's kind of a sample of a much larger thing that I've put together that I'm going to charge more for. So those are things to think about when you're thinking about your price. I put down here, there are no rules. I think the average ebook price is like $7.99. I will say there's still kind of a perception out there, and this is changing, but a perception is an ebook should be cheaper than a printed book. That's still very prevalent in people's thinking. A lot of people just won't pay more than $3.99 for an ebook. So there is still kind of that prejudice against ebooks that they should be cheaper. This is changing. I've noticed a lot of publishers, the big publishers, are putting out ebook versions of their books in their inventory, and they're priced the same. Maybe a couple dollar discount, but really the prices of ebooks are going up, and that is not going to change. They're going to get more expensive as they get more popular.
Can you change the price?
You can. That's a great question. She said, can you change the price? Yes. So the price is not set in stone. It's set in stone if you're printing it and you're publishing the price on the back cover. That's difficult to change. But if you're listing a book digitally, you can change your price. Most places have a rule that if you are going to sell through them, that the price you're listing with them is the lowest price on the market. So you cannot sell a book for $3.99 on Amazon and turn around and sell that same book for $2.99 on Barnes & Noble, or for 99 cents on your website. They want to make sure that they're offering their customers the lowest price of your book. So make sure that you are consistent. So I'm going to pause here. I don't have a slide for this, but I am going to talk a little bit about the aggregators. There are a couple out there that are commonly used. Smashwords is one of them. Lulu.com is another one. These are companies, like I mentioned, that act as middlemen. So they are going to be, they're going to take your file and they'll be the go-between. They'll go to Amazon, they'll go to Barnes & Noble, they'll go to Apple Bookstore, they'll list your book for you. And the price sometimes will break down, so Smashwords will pay you 60%, Amazon will get their 30%, and then Smashwords will take 10%. So you're going to pay more to use Smashwords to sell your book at Amazon than you would if you were just going to go directly and sell it to Amazon. But a lot of people find that the convenience of having somebody do that for them is worth the 10%. So that's something to look into, is to choose a middleman that'll distribute your book to a bunch of different channels. So we are, of course, like as I mentioned, running out of time. I knew this was going to happen. I want to talk really briefly about DRM and ISBN. We're almost at 10:30, so if you need to leave, I understand, but we'll go over a few minutes if you don't mind staying. So a lot of questions come up about DRM. How many of you are familiar with DRM or have heard about DRM? Good. So nobody has any prejudices one way or the other. So DRM stands for Digital Rights Management, and I just put up here the definition of it from Amazon. Barnes & Noble's is very similar. Wikipedia's is similar. So I'm going to read it really quickly to you. DRM is intended to inhibit unauthorized distribution of the book file of your book. Some authors want to encourage readers to share their work and choose not to have DRM applied. If you choose DRM, customers will still be able to lend the book to another user for a short period, which a lot of these companies will let you lend, and can also purchase the book as a gift for someone else. Important, once you publish your book, you cannot change its DRM setting. So DRM is what it is, it's the publishing industry's attempt to limit copywriting and piracy. So it's an extra restriction on the file that kind of locks it down and protects it more than it would be otherwise. So that's what DRM is. A lot of people are very concerned right now about, if I put my book out there, are people going to plagiarize it? Are they going to steal it and sell it elsewhere? This is one way to add an extra layer of protection so that that does not happen. It is not foolproof. It is not a guarantee. And it is also a trade-off. The more protection you put on it, the more restricted it is. It can be frustrating sometimes for customers. The music and movie industry has run into this, trying to use DRM for some things. Sometimes if you have a DRM file, it'll work great for this device, but you can't access it anywhere else. That can be frustrating for your client or your customer. So I put on here, ultimately, whether you decide to use DRM or not is your personal choice that you have to make as a writer. And you have to make it based on your goals. And I want to encourage people to remember that overprotection can sometimes hurt you as much as underprotection can. My personal opinion is that I always pass on DRM. I usually say no. For me, the challenge of publishing is selling your book. And I feel like the fear that it's going to be pirated is often a distraction. Sometimes people are so focused on protecting it, I don't want other people to steal it, that they're not focusing as much on how am I going to get it out there and really sell it to people. So I certainly think that if you want to use DRM, that's a great choice. But if you feel like you don't want to put that extra restriction on there, that is also fine. So it's really up to you. There are some you can do. I would recommend if you're interested in this subject more, go to Wikipedia and look at DRM. They've kind of got arguments for and against it. There are definitely some people in the sort of just the creative information content arena that feel that DRM is a way of controlling the market. So there's all kinds of debate about this whole issue. Make a personal decision based on what you're comfortable with and just go with it from there. So
how does that work for going into another language, other country, and someone copied it or stole it, as you say?
You mean does the...
Like say if they went to Germany and somebody liked your book and then translated into German and sold it as their book. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the whole realm of copyright and piracy is, I mean, I'm not a legal expert on it. I know that your content is copyrighted. If you put something of original content out there, then it's protected by the law. So if somebody is out there taking it, you can take legal action against them if you have proof that they've taken your work and they're putting it out there, another language or not. However, when you start crossing international waters and getting into other countries, the legality of that gets a lot more complicated because different countries have different laws about it. I mean, it can get kind of, I guess my thought is, well, if somebody in German has translated this and it's wildly successful in German, if my name is still on it, then maybe it's good marketing for me and they'll find me and they'll look for me otherwise. If my name's not on it, then maybe, I probably would contact them and say, yeah, there's an organization, and I cannot remember the name of it, but there are some, I think we'll see more of these groups that crop up to be an advocate for people who have had copyright infringement and piracy happen against them. So I think that that will be an issue. Copywriting and piracy has always been part of publishing and ideas. It's not any different now today than it used to be. So I think you just put your work out there. Like I said, the thing I'm most concerned about is people who are so afraid of something being stolen from them that they never put it out there in the first place. So I would rather see you take the risk and put it out there and risk that someone will take it and hijack it from you than to be so afraid that you never actually take the step to get it out there.
You can take it as a compliment.
You can, yeah. Definitely. You can certainly, if it's getting spread around a lot, it may or may not necessarily be a bad thing for you. So what about ISBN numbers? This comes up a lot as well. They always ask you, do you have an ISBN number? To publish something in print, you do need one. To publish something exclusively digitally, you're not required to have one. So an ISBN, this is straight from the dictionary, is an international standard book number, a 10-digit number assigned to every book before publication, recording details like language, provenance, and publisher. So it's not the barcode on the back, but it's always listed above the barcode on the back of a book.
Do you know what they charge for purchase? You can purchase them in...
You can purchase, the prices really vary. And this is, again, one of those arenas where you can sort of get like black market ISBNs, or, I mean, there are some people who will buy bulk ISBN numbers and they'll resell them at a much lower price. An ISBN number is registered with the original purchaser. So if I buy an ISBN number that someone else has published, it's sort of like having like the ownership papers, like if you breed dogs or you have a dog and they've got their sort of lineage and it's documented paperwork, that's kind of how an ISBN number is. So if I publish a book using an ISBN number that I purchased from a reseller, if somebody was to really go back and track, that reseller is the publisher of my book. Even if I'm the publisher and it's my ISBN number that I've purchased from them, the provenance of it really goes back to them. So to buy an ISBN number for yourself, the prices that I most commonly see quoted are usually one ISBN number is like $100 and you can buy a block of 10 of them for $250. That's kind of the ballpark that seems most standard. But there was a client of mine who bought one for $5 last month. My suspicion is that she purchased it from a reseller. It's not the original ISBN. So there's a lot of, the market is kind of all over the place for it. Yes.
But you have to be careful buying from another retailer, because we have a friend whose ISBN was a duplicate.
Yep. There's some fraud in this arena. So that's why I say if it's a $5 ISBN, that's a red flag. Probably it's a reseller selling it, might be a duplicate, it might be something fraudulent, so you need to be a little savvy with it. So do you need one? Yes, if you're planning to publish in print and would like the option of someday distributing it to booksellers. Yes, if you're wanting to sell for Apple, I believe they require one, whether it's digital or print, it doesn't matter. Yes, if you're earnestly building up the credibility of yourself as both a publisher and an author. It's one of those things in the publishing industry that lends credibility to you. Publishing houses look at an ISBN and they take a book with one more seriously than one without. I don't know if the average consumer really pays that much attention to it, but the publishing industry does. So, do you need one? No, if you're publishing in exclusively digital formats, like I said, excluding iBookstore. Both Barnes & Noble and Amazon offer internal ISBN-like numbers for their own records, so they don't require when they assign you a number. And then also, we talked about the aggregators. They offer free ISBN numbers when you use their service. So that's another benefit. Yes? For Barnes & Noble and Amazon? You're listed. Yeah, it's your ISBN number. So that's an advantage of using them, is that they give you a free ISBN. You need one for every format of your book, which is kind of a pain. So if you have a printed version, that has a separate ISBN number than the ebook version of it. Yeah, you can't just use one across the board. It's one per type of book. So I've not purchased to date an ISBN number. My books tend to be used more just for marketing purposes. It's not as important. Again, it's not required, but if you're wanting to be taken more seriously, or if you're wanting at some point to have the option of being in print, go ahead and purchase one. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit. Jolie and I had a conversation. A lot of times this comes up. Can I get my ebook into a library? And the answer is yes, but. So Overdrive is the company that facilitates digital book lending in the library system for all but 2 municipalities in the entire country. Douglas County is one of them in Colorado. They're sort of a pioneer in this area. And then there's another one, I think, in the Midwest that's kind of created their own lending system and bypassed Overdrive. But for now, Loveland Public Library, Fort Collins Public Library, most of them are using Overdrive as that middleman to do their ebook lending. So Overdrive has created a community reserve program for each library, and they say, if you're a local author and you would like to donate your ebook to the library's community reserve, that is available for you. However, this is in their language, you have to settle the digital rights with the library itself. You have to negotiate the digital rights with them directly. So Jolie and I were talking about that. That is an area I think that probably both libraries and self-publishing authors are naive in. I know I am. I don't know all the ins and outs of rights and the implications of rights and signing over rights to someone or retaining rights. So my impression of this was that Overdrive was saying you have to give the rights to the library in order for them to use your book. You don't retain those rights. Or you draw up some kind of legal contract that says, I am giving you licenses to certain rights, which most of us are not lawyers. We don't have the sophistication of creating contracts like that. And your average local library is not going to be doing formal legal contracts. So I say that if you're wanting to use your book commercially now or in the future, then it's probably best not to donate it directly to the library. So my suggestion for now is to maybe create a library-only book, so something just for them that you can use, and maybe it's to introduce you as an author, to get people to read it, and they can find out about you that way and maybe buy one of your other books. But this is only going to be circulated in your library. It's not going to be available elsewhere. Or the other option is give it some time. This is changing so fast. Jolie and I were talking, I think Overdrive's probably going to have to evolve and start permitting an easier way for self-published, independent published authors to take advantage of the library system. So who knows? I mean, within a couple months' time, this could change, and Overdrive could have a way to upload your file into your library that requires less legal savvy on the part of you as a publisher and on the part of your local library. So it's still kind of a gray area. Yeah.
What about printed donations?
Printed donations is a different story. And that's something where because that book is already printed, the rights are elsewhere, so you can go to a library and donate your printed book. It's not the same. It's the digital rights that are still, it's a new arena, there's licenses, it's just kind of, and I don't fully understand all the legal terms and specifications of it, but for print, it's a different story. So yeah, you can donate your printed book to the library. I mean, you would work, most libraries have a program, some kind of rules and regulations about accepting books and getting them into circulation, but you're not dealing with rights the same way as you are with digital content. So that really is my conclusion. Thank you. I know I went over about 15 minutes. So I just want to say, too, we did not get to marketing and selling. The first half of your task is to create your book and get it out there. You've only done half of it by then. The other second half is getting it out there, letting people know about it, getting people to buy it, and that is a conversation for another time. I did bring a clipboard. If you would like to put your name and email address on it, you can start to receive the emails that I send out that have, articles about marketing strategies, that kind of thing. They may or may not be specifically related to self-publishing, but they're almost always related to getting your content out there in some capacity. So I will maybe just pass that around. You can sign up that if you would like to. And I guess we'll close if anyone has any additional questions for me. Yes?
My question really is about what to expect as a digital book going out into the world. How do you set up a payment system?
Well, if you are using someone like Barnes & Noble or Amazon, or if you're going through a third party like Smashwords, they take care of that for you. That's why they ask for your tax ID number. So they collect the money, they distribute your royalty to you, and they send you a check. Usually it's directly deposited into your account on the months that you make sales. And they keep records of that for tax purposes, and then they send you I can't remember if it's a 1099 or a W-4, probably a 1099 tax form that lists your income that you earned through them. So they manage it for you. If you're selling directly through your website, then that's a different story. You'd have to set up your own payment channel for that, and then you would be in charge of the tax recording for that, which is a really viable way to go. But that's, if you're using these other companies, they take care of it for you.
Do these middlemen charge an upfront fee?
Most of them do not. Most of them, the general system right now is that you can list with them for free and they make money when you make money. There's a couple out there that they'll charge like a flat monthly fee, and then you pocket all the proceeds, maybe minus the part that goes to Amazon or the part that goes to Barnes & Noble. That's really not the norm. So that's the exception, not the rule. So for now, it's usually free to set up without a monthly fee associated with it. Yeah?
What services do you offer us?
I help people create, so I'll take, maybe you've created a book and it's in like a Word document and you'd like to get it on Barnes & Noble. So I'll take your document for you and get it into the file format that makes the most sense. I might, if you want it into a PDF, I might style it, take advantage of fonts and layout. I might create graphics for it. I'll create a cover for it. So I do that kind of thing for people. If you're not wanting to deal with some of the formatting issues, or you're not wanting to deal with the technical aspects of creating a cover, or if you're just wanting to, if you want something that's got a lot of different style and layout done to it and you don't want to do that or aren't capable of doing that, I will do that for people. We also do some consulting and strategizing for your marketing and selling part of it. So if you want to sell on your own website, for instance, we can set up a web page that helps you do that, that kind of thing. So that's what we usually do.